All right, guys, sorry about that. We are back. We had a little technical issue with Facebook. Kind of stopped our thing here, but we were going over the power rankings for this week. And as you see, Pittsburgh Steelers ranked there at number 1. Of course, only undefeated team left in the NFL, with Kansas City right behind them with just one loss. But surprisingly, the New Orleans Saints bounce up a little bit in there. I actually have them at number 4 behind the Baltimore Ravens. But, as far as the Chiefs, we talked about this. It could be flip-flopped. The only reason why Steelers are up in number 1 spot is because they are undefeated. And they're actually 8-0 for the first time in their history. So I like the Chiefs, though. It's pretty scary because they're a team, as we saw last year, that just continue to get better and better as the season goes on.
And Patrick Mahomes right now is literally playing MVP ball. Right? I mean, he's putting up 4 and 5 touchdowns almost every week. As we know, they have tons of weapons, a great coach. I think their defense is getting better and better every week. They're learning from, I remember last year when they got closer and closer to the playoffs, you could see them tightening up, playing more, a lot of blitzing off the edge and stuff like that, just putting pressure on the other quarterback so that they can get those mistakes in the back end, with strip fumbles, interceptions, and such. But and I will say, even though the Pittsburgh Steelers are 8-0, I do jump them down a notch because they almost lost to the Dallas Cowboys, one of the top 3 worst teams in the NFL right now. They came back and won the game. Good for them, kept them at 8-0. But I personally would put the Chiefs up at number 1 right now, and they have a bye week, so they're going to have even more preparation now. When they come back, I feel sorry for the team they play. I don't even know who it is in week number 11 coming up, and I would move. I wouldn't move the Saints past the Ravens because the Ravens still are playing very good, but I would be on the lookout for the Saints to get better and better. They just got Michael Thomas back. He only got about 5 or 6 targets in the game, but they still won the game 38-3, versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are also another contender in the NFC. So it's not like they beat a slouch. They got Emmanuel Sanders back. There's a lot of things good going on with the Saints right now, so I'm happy for them.
Well, and the other big thing is that they just put the beat down on the Bucs. So, it's crazy because now you don't really know. As you see here on this list, the Bucs fall 3 spots, and the whole time we're thinking the Buccaneers are going to get better because they just picked up Antonio Brown, who it was a terrible showing for him.
Yeah, a lot of people's talking that's going to be a little bit of distraction there for a little bit because they have so many stars. They got Mike Evans, they got Chris Godwin just came back from injury, Gronk at a tight end, Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones.
Scotty Miller, who was coming out. I
know a lot of the other guys that do podcasts are talking that Antonio Brown is just going to be a sore for a couple weeks because he's a diva. He wants the ball, and it's not his team. It's Tom Brady's team. It's Bruce Arians is the coach, so it's up to them to control who gets the targets and not. So I think it's going to take them a couple weeks to get gelling properly with those 3 great receivers. All 3 of them guys could be top 10 receivers in the league if they were on other teams separately.
Sure.
So I really believe it's going to take them a little bit, and I ultimately, in the beginning of the year, didn't think they were going to win this division anyways. I've always been a high on the Saints and Drew Brees. They were always there in the end, and if we don't forget, the last couple of years, the Saints easily could have been in the NFC Championship. They had a couple bad things go against them, 2 bad pass interference calls, and then that pass interference call against the Rams 2 years ago where they didn't throw the flag. The guy obviously hit him ahead of time. That would have been a game-winning field goal. They would have been in the NFC Championship game. They probably would have won that year, but we can't go back and rehash it. But I think they're going to be, in the end, one of the great teams. And if you look at this list that we got up on the thing right now, guess who's not on the list? The Seattle Seahawks are 6-2, and they got them ranked. Where do we got them ranked at?
Well, so there's
number
a
7.
Couple different lists here. So on our list here, we have them ranked We actually have the Bucks in at number 7,
right?
And then the Seahawks fall under that. But
so it really is amazing how things can change within 2 weeks. Because 2 weeks ago, I remember Seahawks were ranked number 2.
Yeah, they were up there at number 2. But the thing is like this just goes to show you what we were talking about. If Seattle actually had a defense,
yep.
So like the Buffalo Bills, I almost put them a little bit ahead of the Saints here. Because they put up 44 points against Seattle. Yep. Absolutely no defense with them, whatever. And the Bills actually do have a good defense. And if Josh Allen continues to ball out like they're playing, I think we'll see the Bills move up even closer. So I really think that this is the best year of football that I have ever seen in my lifetime because there's so many stout teams.
Right.
And the level of professionalism and the way these guys are playing are so high right now.
And as you notice, there's 4 AFC teams there in the top 7 out of only 3 NFC teams. So I mean, it really shows you that the Kansas City Chiefs, even though they are in the NFC and the AFC, they're just a powerhouse. I mean, it doesn't matter what division they're in. They don't care if the Steelers. Obviously, we didn't expect the Steelers to come back from last year, but having Roethlisberger with all these young talent and Juju Smith-Schuster, James Conner, and that defense is just playing outstanding. I mean, their defensive line with J.J. Watt's what's his little brother's first name? T.J. Watt.
T.J. Watt.
And they got
another brother too.
Minkah Fitzpatrick, the safety who had a game-saving deflection last week against the Cowboys. So the Cowboys could have beat them. They had I think it was 3rd and goal or 3rd from the 20-yard line. If they would have made that catch, they would have won the game. I mean, so I'm excited about how the season's getting ramped up, especially for fantasy football, but more especially for these teams, because this is when you really see the true athletes, competitors, and the guys that are out there trying to get W's. I mean, coaches, players, all them combined. I mean, we're not even talking about the Los Angeles Rams, the Arizona Cardinals, the Chicago Bears with their great defense, the Indianapolis Colts. I think there's a lot of teams that could get in to the top 7 on each side, AFC, NFC, that we may not even recognize at this moment of the season.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I wanted to bring up this image here so we could talk about this a little bit. I mean, obviously, the top contenders. I mean, that's going without saying, but like you were saying before, I mean, what about the Colts, the Browns, the Dolphins, like the Raiders, the Cardinals? Like all these guys definitely have playoff potential. They have the ability to get in there and do some damage. We saw like a few years back when I think the Seahawks had a losing record and made it into the playoffs and then end up knocking somebody off out of the first round. I think it was Green Bay that year.
Yeah, I remember that.
So, like, a similar situation can happen here, especially when we're talking about the NFC East.
So, speaking of that, what kind of teams would you pick? Say they become the 7th and 6th seed. Which is a team on this list right here we're looking at that has a possibility to knock off, say, I won't go as far as saying like the Chiefs or Seahawks, but say like a team like Pittsburgh or Green Bay or the Saints. What's a team that can knock them off in the playoffs?
I mean, I really like the Cardinals right now. We were talking about Kyler Murray earlier today. I mean, this is a guy who can run the football. He's very similar to like a player like Lamar Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, you're really high on Chase Edmonds.
I am.
Which is another great weapon. And then plus all their other weapons.
They got DeAndre Hopkins. They got Patrick Peterson on defense.
This is a team that you don't want to see in the playoffs.
Especially with their offensive ability. I like what you're saying there because if you can't put up 30-plus, you may not beat this team because they're averaging right around 30 per game. It just ultimately comes down to what we were saying earlier. If their defense holds up enough for them to win the game, they're definitely capable of beating any team in the NFC. I like that. Good pick.
Like I'm probably not concerned maybe about the Cleveland Browns or the Chicago Bears because, the Cleveland Browns, while Baker Mayfield, yes, plays pretty good, the defense is okay. but they're injured. No OBJ. They're kind of have some issues with the wide receivers. And then you go to the Bears. Well, they're having an issue with their quarterback because, as we've seen with Foles, he's not mobile at all. He's definitely a pocket passer.
Yep.
And even though the defense plays really good, if their offense can't put points on the board, so these are teams I'm maybe not concerned about as much. Derek Carr obviously is starting to come on a little bit with the Raiders, and of course they have Josh Jacobs, so there's also a possibility there. I like the Indianapolis Colts as well because we already know they have a stout defense.
Yep.
And if for some reason Phillip Rivers can actually he wasn't even in. Who they have in?
I think
Brissett the other week or something.
Did they bring him in late in the game?
Yeah, somebody they brought in late in the game, but
Rivers is still the starter, so we're going to see him. If he could just limit his mistakes,
the interceptions is
Yep.
the issue with them. And I think with all the possibilities that they have with running backs, I mean, if they can get their running backs and they can play just, bruiser football, I think that they can have, they can at least get in and have something going on. But a team I really like is the Miami Dolphins. I mean, what a turnaround. They were already playing great with Fitzpatrick. Now Tua's coming in. And I don't know, man. Like, I feel like this is a team that can do some damage if they get in there.
And that's a division that's up for taking because, I mean, I know Buffalo's playing great. They scored a lot of points against Seattle. But Miami's only 2 games behind them, and I believe they haven't played yet. So they're going to have to play two times this year. That could come down to head-to-head record who wins that division. I'm excited for it because I love seeing rookies, especially for fantasy football. It's guys that we're looking for in the future to put on our teams. And the ability to see them out there playing against each other, like this week with Tua and Justin Herbert, I'm really excited about it. One more team I want to mention is just in the NFC, in the division that we were talking about with Seattle and Arizona. Don't forget about the Los Angeles Rams. These guys were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago against the New England Patriots and were the favorites. If Todd Gurley did not get banged up a week prior in the NFC Championship game, I do believe they would have beat the Patriots that year. They had a couple injuries that cost them, but they have a great coach in Sean McVay, and they just came off of a bye. They still have Cooper Kupp, great receivers. They don't have, obviously, Todd Gurley anymore, but they have two running backs that are a good committee that run the ball great. And they're in a division right now that's becoming close because Seattle just lost their last 2 games. So now the division is the 49ers 4-5, Los Angeles Rams 5-3, Cardinals 5-3, and Seattle 6-2. So at any point, say the Rams beat the Seattle later in the year, guess what they are? They're the leader of that division. So that makes them a 3 or 4 seed, and I think they are scary because their defense can stand up against any offense in the league. I know they had that letdown a few weeks ago against Miami because Miami's defense did what we expected the Rams to do to Miami.
Yeah.
They had 2 turnovers, a forced fumble, and then a punt return. But if that doesn't happen, I believe the Rams would have been more on track. Goff wouldn't have made those mistakes because he was trying to come back. I like the Rams. I love their colors of their jerseys. That's another thing that I appreciate. But let's not forget about them, especially when it comes to fantasy. Like a player like Cooper Kupp. I remember talking to you the other week. We were watching the game, Miller's Ale House, with me, your wife Julia, and our friend John.
That's a free plug, Miller's Ale House.
And
just so you know.
Of course, we're in Bel Air, and I'm watching the game where they're trying to come back. And Cooper Kupp he got 21 targets in the game. Unfortunately,
Crazy.
He only caught 11. But Robert Woods is a great player, so I know I'm on a long rant here, but I just want everybody not to forget about the Los Angeles Rams.
No, I'm completely with you. One of the things I wanted to talk about before we go to start and sit, I'm like, we're mid-season now here. So who is your pick for most valuable player? You were talking about MVP a little bit earlier today. I mean, here's 4 guys at the top: Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, and Josh Allen. Of course, these guys are in contention for MVP. Who do you like, man, and why?
For me right now, it's obviously the Super Bowl champ, the MVP from Lamar Jackson was last year. Patrick Mahomes from 2 years ago, who had the MVP. The guy is on a great pace, and he's just getting better and better every week. It's something that you can't slow down. I mean, if they don't have any injuries to this offense, he's going to stay steady. I mean, right now he's currently on a pace of, he's thrown 25 touchdowns, and he's only got 1 interception for the whole year. I mean, the way the guy escapes the pocket, the arm strength to get the ball to anybody downfield. They're 8-1, the Kansas City Chiefs. He's thrown for 2,687 yards. So, I mean, and that's halfway through the season. So he's on pace right now. Well, I'm sorry, they played 9 games, so a little bit under that. If you take away 300 points, he's on pace for right around 4,800 yards in a season. And that easily could jump up because if we remember earlier in the year, he had a couple games where they were running the ball more with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which was good for me in fantasy. He had like 25 carries. But now it seems like they're, doing a lot of option plays. I got to put him first. It seems like Rodgers is really hot right now, but you got to, in my opinion, leave Mahomes there because of the struggling situation with Seattle right now. I love Russell Wilson, but I just can't put him at the top.
Yeah, I'm with you. I liked Russ too, and I thought surely, the first 6 or 7 weeks that he was destined for MVP. But, I don't want to be on the bandwagon like everybody else, but I just feel like Mahomes is a guy of which we just have not seen yet in the NFL. There's been lots of great quarterbacks, Manning and all these other guys, even Brady, a lot of people talking about, but I just feel like Mahomes is in like another league, and I think it's something that we've never seen before. I think that it's very something special watching this guy, and if they get back and win the Super Bowl this year, I think hands down he's going to be the MVP. So
it's funny. I was watching a sitcom on TV the other day. I can't remember who was bringing it up in their podcast, but they were joking about why are we even in this conversation about MVP. How about next year we just make it the Patrick Mahomes Most Valuable Player Award, but just let him be the MVP, and let's give the award to who finishes second,
right?
And I'm with that scenario because it looks unstoppable. If they don't have any injuries to their offense, he's just going to continue to stay steady. They have a great coach. Anybody that watched the game last week, did you see the play where they actually put Patrick Mahomes, which you don't see this a lot, they put him in motion. He went to the right. They snapped the ball. He was in motion, and then he rolls out to the opposite way to the right, all the way around, avoiding defensive linemen because they can't even get close to him. And then he just throws the ball back to his left to a wide-open guy in the touchdown. I think Andy Reid is saving a lot of these trick plays and intricate abilities for the playoff stretch coming up. I don't see anybody stopping them. It's an easy pick for me. MVP, Patrick Mahomes.
Awesome.
If you live in Vegas, go put in the bet now. You can't you can't lose any money.
All right, man. Let's move on to the Stardom and Situm. Here we go. This is what everybody wants to know. Who do I start this week? Who do I sit this week? I mean, I rack my brain about it all week for my own teams, and then I got to come in here and share all the information on here with everybody else. So pay attention, guys, because we're getting down to the nitty-gritty into the playoff run here. So don't want to make any mistakes here. Don't want to falter with your lineup. So let's get it in. Get it in.
All right, I'm going to let you go first, Jake.
All right, well, I'm going to go with my stardom for quarterback, who is also going to be my boom for the week. And we were just talking about them. The Rams is Jared Goff. Last time we saw Jared Goff in week 8 against Miami, it was a complete disaster. We watched it together. He was 35 of 61 passing for 355 yards. Only had 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. Plus, he also lost 2 fumbles, which was crazy. So, it's really hard to attempt 61 passes and still only put up 12 fantasy football points. But there's nothing better than a bye week for Jared Goff to get him thinking about the worst game of the season for him. And let's face it, they're going into week 10 against Seattle, who we just saw the Buffalo Bills put up 44 points against them. Seattle has allowed the most fantasy football points to opposing quarterbacks this season, and that sentence just doesn't hammer home my point. If you see the numbers, in the 5 quarterbacks have scored 28 fantasy football points against the Seattle Seahawks. Kyler Murray, Josh Allen have been over 40 points,
wow,
in the past 2 out of 3 weeks. So the Seahawks are averaging 29 29.6 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks this season, and they've allowed 21 total touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks and an average of 362 yards. So it would be an epic fail if Jared Goff didn't have a good outing here and his last 3 games of the seasons with at least 28 points. So my start of the week and my boom for the week is forget about what happened against Miami and put in Jared Goff. He's going off this week.
Good pick. He was obviously on top of one of my lists, too. I'm going to go with one of my favorite players and a guy who actually we were just talking about possibly in the MVP race. I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers this week. They're going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, struggling defense in the league. They're giving up 22.7 PPR fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. And as we are speaking, Aaron Rodgers is second in the league, only letting go 2 interceptions to a total of 24 touchdowns this year, 2,253 yards total through 8 games. Their team's 6-2. I think this is going to be one of those games where they win by 14 to 17 points over the Jaguars. It's just easy pick for me here, and I'll also make it easy for you guys. This will also be my boom for quarterbacks this week, and that's it. That's simple.
All right. 4 running backs. I'm going to say it. Start on Mike Davis. We've been down this road again. Before in talks, but they're playing Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is 19th against opposing running backs. And, obviously McCaffrey had a big game, and now he's hurt again. So Davis is going to be back in. And even with McCaffrey in there, Davis had 8 catches for 74 yards on 8 targets. So now he's going to be the complete starter again, where he's going to get fed all the handoffs here. So I think like he's got a much higher value here in PPR leagues because he's going to be catching out of the backfield. And as long as McCaffrey out, Mike Davis is going to be a go-to guy. So if you decide to keep him and didn't drop him in your leagues, Mike Davis must start here this week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Good pick. I have my 2 players that I'm going to play, but I forgot to put down who they're playing. Do you know who the Cleveland Browns are playing this week? Real fast,
Cleveland Browns are playing the Houston Texans this week.
Okay, thank you.
Good matchup there.
I have my numbers up. So, for instance, I'm going to put the Cleveland Browns running backs because we have a committee now back with it's heard that I heard that Nick Chubb is coming off IR and he will be active this week. I don't know how much playing time he's going to get, but if everybody remembers in like the first 4 to 5 weeks, Kareem Hunt was actually averaging more points then for fantasy points when Chubb was in the game because he's the versatile back. Chubb was getting all the powerful runs through the tackle line, but then you got Hunt with the screen passes on the edge, and then if they're getting breathers when they close to the end zone, sometimes Hunt was getting the touchdowns. But they're going up against the Houston Texans, who are giving up 30.3 PPR fantasy points per game. So you could easily start, which is probably not going to happen if you have both these players on your team. You could start Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb both this week. Obviously, if you only have one of them, I think it's a great pick. Move on with it and start them.
Yeah, it's a good point. The Texans have allowed 4 touchdowns to running backs in the past 3 games, and they're number 3 in fantasy points allowed to that position. So,
and they got 2 of the best backs in the league coming in this week.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. All right, my stardom for wide receiver. Let's see who's it going to be this week. I like, who do we want to go with this week? I like your man, Cooper Kupp.
Good one.
And the reason why, I just told you Goff, my start of the week, and the same reason why they're playing Seattle, who's got an absolute terrible defense.
Horrendous.
Yeah, and they rank 32, so dead last against wide receivers. And Kupp is one of those guys that he's scored at least 11 PPR points in all but 2 games this season. And, you talked about him before, in regards to how many attempts he's getting. So those guys, like both of those guys, Woods and Kupp, I think the receiver core here is probably good to go either which way you want.
Yep.
And because they're allowing the most fantasy points to opposing receivers this year, I like the duo of Kupp and Woods here.
It is amazing the numbers that I just want to give you the quick numbers of what Seattle's giving up to a receiving core. They're giving. Wait till you hear this number. They're giving up an average of 59.5 fantasy points per game. I mean, it truly is a struggling situation for them right now. And as we were talking, the Seattle, if they lose this game, I think this is their first matchup against the Rams. They would lose the number one spot in that division, and the Rams would be number one. So good pick there. I'm hoping it works out for me because obviously I do have Cooper Kupp on a team. But I'm going to move on to one of my best picks of the week for stardoms. It's going to be gold for this week and a lot of weeks here upcoming.
Gold, folks.
It's my boom also. It is Allen Robinson, the wide receiver for the Chicago Bears. Allen. I love Allen Robinson. He's on plenty of my fantasy teams. He's the number one target getter in that offense. Nick Foles, when he gets in trouble, he can throw it up to him. It can be a slant. It don't really matter where this guy is on the field. They're playing against the Minnesota Vikings, giving up 45.3 PPR points per game. Set it and forget it.
Look, I want to add one little thing on the receiver end. Is one of my sleeper peaks is Brandon Ayuk, and not really that he's a sleeper that much anymore, but the only reason why he was out week 9 is because he was on the COVID-19 reserve list. But Ayuk has had 14 catches for 116 yards and a touchdown on 17 targets, and he should be the number one target for Nick Mullins. So it's a tough matchup against the Saints, but I really like Ayuk here.
Right.
I think that the floor is pretty low. I mean, pretty high here for him. So a little sleeper pick there if you have Ayuk, and again, maybe on the waiver wire still for some teams.
I like it. Another quick one also would be Will Fuller. I think he's having a great game against Cleveland.
Yeah, I like Will Fuller. Too bad I traded him away.
I know. Anybody out there that doesn't know and hasn't listened to our podcast, Jake traded away Will Fuller and Deshaun Watson. Hopefully it works out for him in the end. He did get the monster in Derrick Henry. I understand it for the long stretch.
And Robbie Anderson, by the way.
That's true. I forgot about the Robbie Anderson part of it. So ultimately,
and Deontay Johnson.
Ultimately, I think he strengthened his team for the long stretch. It's been hurting him these last 2 weeks, but that's okay.
Oh, it's killed me because the prior week he was on a bye and then he puts up 7 points. So I mean, oh my god!
All right, well let's.
Nasty.
Since we're done talking, you want me to go on with the tight ends, or you want to start tight ends?
I don't want to steal your.
You got it. Don't look over here.
Don't look.
All right, so I'm gonna go with a game that I actually think is going to be a big win for Philadelphia. That was my pick'em of the week. But I'm going to go against their defense this week and pick Evan Ingram for the New York Giants. He's really their last weapon that they have available on this offense. Golden Tate has been banged up. Obviously, they lost Saquon Barkley for the year earlier this season. Philadelphia has given up 16.4 points per game. Evan Ingram's getting about 7 to 8 targets on average. I think it's a good week for him. Let's say somewhere around 15 fantasy points. Get him in your lineups.
All right, for mine, I actually have 2 picks here for stardom on tight end. One I want to go with is Eric Ebron. They're playing the Cincinnati Bengals this week, and Cincinnati ranks 30th to opposing tight ends. And the Bengals are coming into Week 10 against the Steelers, allowing 6 touchdowns to tight ends in their past 4 games. So this works well with Ebron, who scored in 2 consecutive games against Baltimore and Dallas, and he has had at least 11 points in 3 games in a row. So either way, whether Roethlisberger starts or not, or if Mason Rudolph still comes in, I think it'll be a crutch for Mason Rudolph. So I like Ebron there, but I want to touch base on this other one because he's always been on. He's been on and off the radar this year, all season. I had him on my team. I think you still have him on your team, and it's Jimmy Graham.
Yep.
One of the things that we talked about when we were watching the games, a couple weeks ago is that, I told you, I said Graham is one of these tight ends that is really touchdown dependent. So, he's not a guy that's going to probably give you a lot of yards, but he is a guy that could get 2 touchdowns, no problem, and could put up there. And Graham has been Graham's had at least 6 targets in 4 games in a row now. now, and hopefully he can find the end zone the 6th time this year against the Vikings. Minnesota's allowed a tight end to score at least 12 points in 3 games in a row now, so he's kind of like my sleeper pick here, and I think that Foles just looks for him in the end zone.
Yep.
Ex-basketball player.
When they're in the red zone,
guy can get up there. He's certainly a red zone target. So I like Jimmy Graham. If you need somebody desperately to start, this is a guy I think that can get you some points this week.
I'm actually in a pickle in my league that you were mentioning that I have Jimmy Graham in. I think I'm going to start him because of the defense they're going up against. Like I said earlier, against Minnesota. I have Gronkowski also in that same league. And the reason I'm going to go with Jimmy Graham, obviously, is because Tampa Bay just recently added Antonio Brown. So now Gronk becomes the 4th option in that situation instead of the 3rd. So I'm going to go with Jimmy Graham this week. I like it. And another one, not to forget real quick, we won't go into long details. TJ Hawkinson has been playing real great these last few weeks. Washington football team is great against the run, but they struggle a little bit across the middle with their linebackers. I love his matchup this week with Kenny Galladay still banged up. So TJ Hawkinson versus the Washington football team is a good pick too.
Awesome. All right, my start for the week for defense is going to be the Minnesota Vikings. They're at Chicago, and Foles has been sacked 12 times in the past 3 games. That's a lot of sacks. And he's had an interception in all but 1 game this year. And the Vikings just had 2 sacks and 3 interceptions against Matthew Stafford in Week 9. And they should be a quality defense for the 2nd week in a row. So my pick is the Minnesota Vikings.
Nice pick. I'm going to go with 2 real quick because I couldn't pick between either one. The first one is obviously the New Orleans Saints. They've coming on strong here lately. We saw what they did against Tampa Bay last week. They're going up against San Francisco this week, and obviously they're getting used to a couple of receivers coming back, and the running back committee is banged up. It's an easy pick there, New Orleans. And then obviously the pick of the week for me for defense is the Pittsburgh Steelers versus Cincinnati Bengals. It's a divisional game, the last undefeated team in the league. They're one of the greatest defenses right now in the league, defending the run. I do believe Cincinnati's getting back Joe Mixon this week. He was game time decision coming up, but I don't think that matters. Their defensive line's great, and they're going to be up in the game, so Cincinnati's going to have to throw later, and I think that's going to give availability to the secondary to make plays, interceptions, yada. So it's a big pick for me. Pittsburgh is going to dominate this week against Cincinnati and move to 9-0.
All right, well, my sit-em for quarterback this week is none other than Cam Newton. I know you don't like that, but look, they're playing Baltimore, and Newton just snapped his streak of 4 games in a row with 17 fantasy points or less when he had 23 points at the Jets, and we're talking about the Jets. So, I mean, it should have happened, but I expect him to struggle Sunday night against Baltimore. The Ravens have only allowed more than 20 fantasy points against Mahomes in Week 3 and Wentz in Week 6, including matchups with Deshaun Watson, Joe Burrows, and Ben Roethlisberger. So Newton is only worth starting in 2 quarterback leagues, which ours is. So
I understand
he can
that.
still get you 15 points, but I just don't like him against the defense here.
I actually put another quarterback on my roster just in case I want to sit Cam this week. I probably won't just because of his availability to get rushing touchdowns if they get close to the end zone.
Sure.
But I'm going to go with somebody who's actually one of your best players to ever exist on the history of the football team. You love this guy, but unfortunately I'm going against him this week. I know you're going to hate this, just like I hate you calling out Cam Newton on my fantasy team. But I'm going to sit Kirk Cousins this week against the Chicago Bears. I
don't have Kirk Cousins on
Well, I mean, in general, you have like a love-hate, more of a love-love relationship with this guy.
You like that?
You like that?
You like that?
He's not going to like that this week against the Chicago Bears. We saw what they did against Tom Brady, who obviously everybody calls him the GOAT. He's not Kirk Cousins, but he's not the GOAT in general either. But but
we're not going to get free sunglasses now because of this.
We're
Tom Brady.
not worried about that. We're not going to call him the GOAT to get glasses because it's
Don't
not
listen
even
to him, Brady.
close.
You can send the sunglasses.
There's
to
5 players better than you, Brady. I'm sorry.
Oh my god.
But anyways, the Chicago Bears are giving up 15.1 PPR fantasy points a game. Cousins, he has a couple weapons, but it doesn't seem like Adam Thielen is in a lot of game script. Obviously, Dalvin Cook has been doing most of the work for them. 70% of the work in my eyes the last couple of weeks. He's really dominating on the ground. I think they're going to have to do that in order to win this game against Chicago, because Khalil Mack coming off the edge, you got to take advantage of the middle of the field instead of the outside. So I'm going to set Kirk Cousins this week.
Oh, my goodness. Well, the good thing about the Vikings is Kirk Cousins doesn't really need to throw the ball.
No, he doesn't.
Just hand it off to Dalvin Cook.
That could work good for you then.
I know. That would be. I'm happy about this.
You just got to pray that Chicago doesn't cause Cook to fumble and you lose 2 points.
Or get injured. I don't want that to happen
I don't want that to happen either to anybody's
knock
team,
on wood.
So.
Knock on wood.
All right, how about I go first on the running backs?
Yeah, Don, you don't want me to steal nobody, so.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Who do you like to sit this week?
I'm really going to hurt your soul.
Oh, man.
But
I know what you're going to say. I already know it.
You know I'm going to say it, right?
Yeah. Can I just say?
I don't want to do
Ronald
it.
Jones, right?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
It's even worse than that. This guy's one of the best backs in the league.
Oh.
He's going up against the Indianapolis Colts tonight, Thursday Night Football. I'm going out on a bold stretch here, and I'm setting Derrick Henry this week against the Indianapolis Colts.
No way is it happening.
They're only giving up 18.5 PPR fantasy points to a committee of running backs. Let's remember that. And we saw what he did last week against, what did he get you, like 8 fantasy points?
7, not
7.
even.
And that's against Tennessee's defense. What do you think he's going to do against Indianapolis? Top #1 run defense in the league. Or number 2, actually, behind Pittsburgh, just slightly. But I'm scared of it. I mean, it can save you if he gets a touchdown late in the game or when they get close. But ultimately, between the 20s, Derrick Henry is going to struggle tonight against Indianapolis.
You know, one of the reason why I made that trade with Henry, and I just want to touch base on this a little bit. Yes, he's got a tough schedule, in the next couple games because he's playing Indy, Baltimore, Indy. Okay, all back-to-back the next 3 games. So that is a really tough schedule for him. But if you look at going into playoff weeks, and which we were talking about earlier, about setting off the playoffs, then week 13 he's at Cleveland. He should be good there.
That's great.
Then 14, right, as a playoff
First
start,
playoff
you have
round.
Jacksonville Jaguars.
I love it.
Then the Detroit Lions. Then the Green Bay.
Okay, I see what you did there.
So the thing is like he is a guy is setting up for me for my playoff run, and I think that's when he's going to be the biggest. I understand that the matchup is tough against him, but if you got him on your team, you got to play him. I don't care what Wilkie says. I mean,
obviously you have to play him. I'm just saying, be cautious. You're always going to have this guy in your lineup, just like, say Allen Robinson, for instance, on my team. If he had a bad matchup, I'm still going to play him, but I'm just saying he's going to be limited tonight. Don't be sad if he only puts up 15 or less fantasy points. It's just a given. It happens sometimes. But as you were saying, I like how you were mentioning that later in the year is what matters.
Yeah.
Especially for a guy like you. You're 7-2, I think, in that league.
8-1.
Oh, it's 8-1 in that league. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Which league are we in?
Derrick Henry? No, that's in Bruce.
Oh, yeah.
I think you're
7-2, yeah.
So, I mean, it's nice to be in that spot.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to really rely on Henry this week. But speaking of that, remember I just mentioned Allen Robinson on my stardom. In week 14 and 15, Allen Robinson goes up against Houston and Minnesota, number 26 and number 30 ranked players. So I'm just fighting my way to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And then we're both going to feel comfortable knowing that we have a strong team at that point. You guys don't forget that. That's why we're here. We're putting the information out there for you. It means a lot to us to just be acknowledged that we've been doing this for years.
Yeah.
It's not something that just comes naturally. We're not gifted. We have to look into the stats.
I am
yada
gifted.
Yada. Well, gifted in other things. We're not talking about fantasy football. But so as I'm speaking with that, Jake, who is your sit-em of the week for running back?
Didn't I just give you my sit-em?
I talked about Derrick Henry. I went
didn't.
first.
Oh man, you didn't. All right,
I jumped ahead. I had to.
Yeah, my sit-em this week is going to be Devin Singletary for the Buffalo Bills. They're playing the Arizona Cardinals, and it's 5 games now in a row that Singletary has scored single digits in PPR.
Oof.
And that's even with 3 catches in Week 9 against Seattle. Zach Moss is a way better fantasy back in Buffalo right now, and Moss actually should be considered the starter in all leagues. with his value higher in non-PPR leagues. But Singletary only has 1 touchdown on the season and just 8 catches in the past 5 games, and he's only had 2 carries for 1 yard against the Seahawks. So he's not very productive enough to trust in the majority of the leagues, and certainly not against the Arizona Cardinals defense.
Gotcha. Go ahead on into your wide receiver. I'll start him too.
All right, my wide receiver.
I'm sorry, sit him.
My wide receiver sit him is going to be Justin Jefferson. So this is a young rookie who is having an extraordinary year. But again, they're playing the Chicago defense, which ranks 3rd against opposing wide receivers. And it's really hard to start Jefferson or Adam Thielen, with much confidence. And the main reason is just the same reason why you said Kirk Cousins is not going to have a big game, and it's because Dalvin Cook is dominating the Minnesota offense in the past 2 games for the Vikings. So, any of those receivers right now for the Minnesota Vikings, I'd say if you have different options, then I would start them. And Jefferson still remains the number 2 fantasy receiver under Thielen.
Yep.
But he's also just had 5 catches for 65 yards on 9 targets in the past 2 games. So I sit Jefferson this week.
Yeah, I like that. I think this could be another one of those game scripts like I'm predicting tonight for Tennessee and Indy. It's going to be like a 24-20 game with Chicago and Minnesota. Dalvin Cook, obviously, if Minnesota somehow was to get up early, he has the availability to go off, but I do believe these receivers and Kirk Cousins are going to have a very tough week at Chicago. Good pick. I'm going to go on and say it's a player I talked about earlier in our first couple segments. I'm going to sit DJ Chark this week against Green Bay. They have a rookie receiver. I think his first name's Jerry. His last name's Alexander. I forget what college he came from, but he's going to be guarding him. He follows around a lot of the number 1 receivers, and I know Jacksonville is excited about this rookie coming in Luton, but DJ Chark is not going to have a lot of opportunities to stretch the field deep down like he did last week. So let's set him on the bench.
All right, my sentiment tight end this week is going to be Hunter Henry. They're playing Miami's defense, who's ranks 4th against opposing tight ends. I do believe Henry will start scoring touchdowns soon, but it probably won't happen this week. He comes into Week 10 against the Dolphins with just 1 touchdown on the season, and he scored 7 PPR points or less in 3 games in a row. And he doesn't even have at least 7 targets in 3 of the past 4 games. So with the Dolphins playing, pretty good defense right now, I just don't think that it's a good matchup for Hunter Henry. So he's my sit for this week at tight end.
Good one. All right, and my sit of the week is going to be Jared Cook for the New Orleans Saints. He's going up against San Francisco, and surprisingly, even though San Francisco's defense got a lot of injuries, they're only giving up 9 points per game to tight ends. And if you all remember last week, Michael Thomas, a wide receiver for the Saints, is back in the mix. And they got Emmanuel Sanders back off of, I think it was either injury or COVID. I forget what happened to him. But he's back there too, so I think they're just going to spread the ball around. I remember watching the game against Tampa Bay with New Orleans. They say Drew Brees threw it to 11 different receivers in the first half.
Sure.
So with that opportunity, Jared Cook might only get 2 to 3 targets for the whole game. So, you're going to be touchdown dependent. I'm very scared of it. I'm so glad he is not on any of my fantasy teams. I don't have to worry about it. But sit Jared Cook. It's an easy one there.
All right. Just go right into your defense, Sid. Who are you going to sit
All right,
this
my
week
sit of the week for defense
if you
is...
remember. Did you remember?
I did. I'm on track on it now. I faltered the first few weeks, but I'm learning how to copy and paste and move them on to the next week
There
now.
you go.
It's been great. So my sit of the week is... I don't want to go with the easy pick. So my easy pick was I was going to sit the Jaguars versus Green Bay because they're one of the most potent offenses in the league. That's the easy one. I'm going to go with New England's defense against Baltimore. So obviously they couldn't slow down Joe Flacco with the Jets.
Oh, man.
What do you think they're going to do against Lamar Jackson with the thing coming out about Lamar Jackson saying that defenses are calling their plays? That's going to get changed up now.
So
they're going to be running the ball more. If they do the play option, maybe they do a play action to a receiver or to Andrews across the middle, which I believe they're not using enough like they used last year.
Sure.
Mark Andrews was one of their biggest weapons last year, and I don't understand why they have backed off of that. Maybe there's an injury thing there where he's not 100%. They're not telling us.
Right.
I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to stay away from New England's defense for that main instance, especially with time of possession. Baltimore's offense going to have the ball way more than Cam in that offense. So set the Patriots, even though they're still top 10 in the league, regardless of the record.
Yeah. All right, well, my sit-em is going to be the Cardinals' defense versus the Buffalo Bills. You know, I kind of liked the Cardinals' defense in Week 9 with the expectations that Arizona's defense would do well against a young Tua Tagovailoa, but that didn't even happen. So now you should definitely bench them against the Bills. While Josh Allen was sacked 7 times in Week 9 against the Seattle Seahawks, that was the first time that he's been sacked more than twice since Week 3. He only has 2 interceptions in the past 4 games, and the Cardinals have allowed 62 points in the past 2 outings against Seattle and Miami. So because they didn't do anything against a young rookie Tua, I don't think they're going to be able to keep Josh Allen in check. So definitely sit the Cardinals if you have them this week. Try to stream a different defense.
I like it.
Well, there you have it, guys. That's the stardom and sit 'em for the week. Man, it's been crazy. Lots of good information out there. Don't forget that tonight, big game tonight, so you should definitely tune in and check that out. Indianapolis Colts versus the Tennessee Titans should be interesting, kicking off around 8 p.m. tonight.
I'll tell you what, Jake. We're going to talk about this after the podcast is over. We got a lot of games this week where we can bet some lunch on.
Let's do it, because I need to get back on track here. I mean, obviously, I had faltered a little bit, you know. With,
of course.
With my picks, and mainly it's because I felt bad because I was dusting you off.
Don't listen to him, guys. I actually started picking properly.
Guys, you're watching the Fantasy Football Huddle. We're here every Thursday to bring you all the news and action around the NFL, including the best possible players to start in the up-and-coming weeks. And, of course, just giving you a little bit of advice and some information about what happened prior. But, man, this has been a good segment. And
real quick, Jake.
Yes.
Don't forget, everybody, to go out there and like our Fantasy Football Huddle page on Facebook. Please share the podcast as much as you can. We're just out there getting more information, gradually getting better and better every week. We really appreciate you guys following.
Yeah, please. We're on Twitter, guys, at info@theffhshow.com. On Facebook and Instagram, you can follow us. And please, if you're enjoying all the information, feel free to drop us a donation through PayPal, info@theffhshow.com. Any amount, it would be perfect. And, hey, look, it's been a great show. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back here next Thursday to see how bad we screwed up all these matchups. And should be fun. But, look, for Get Some Wilkie, I'm Jay Stacks Lawson, and you're watching the Fantasy Football Huddle.
All right.
See you guys.
Live from the USA, it's the Fantasy Football Huddle with Shaun Get Some Wilkie and Jake J Stacks Lawson. Broadcasting around the world with up-to-date fantasy football news.
Here we go.